get you back inside your head. Before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride. Steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear for a night. Just to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Good morning, folks. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris, and you guys can follow me on Twitter if you don't already, right there, at People's_Pundit. All right. It's Scared Stupid on Freewheeling Friday. I got some new polling numbers I want to go over that really just, it says it all. All right. We're going to explain, as you guys know, I do think Trump is down. I just don't think he's down by the margins that we're seeing out there. And we'll talk about a couple of the new polls. But I want to show you something that really just wraps everything up nice and neat, puts a little bow on it. Okay, it's got some polling from that we're doing. And then something that Rasmussen shared with us before I went on today. Okay. And then, you know what? I'm going to leave my little tirade for later. Let's go over it first, and then I'll explain where we're going with this. Okay. Rasmussen, if they didn't already, they're going to come out with a poll today about safety, how voters feel about safety, and that they have actually now more confidence in Joe Biden than they do Donald Trump to make things better. All right. Obviously, party affiliation makes a big difference, but unaffiliated voters, it tells the tale. 52% of likely voters personally feel less safe than they did 4 years ago. That's not good, considering we've talked about this before. Presidential justifications, make America great again, meant a lot of things. And one of them was safety and sanity. Let's get back to the kind of, Norman Rockwell friendly America, safe America. But 52% don't feel that way. 19% only feel more safe. 26% say their feeling of personal safety is about the same. 64% of Democrats and 53% of voters not affiliated with either major party feel less safe. That compares to just 40% of Republicans. Republicans are more likely than others to feel more safe. No shocker. 49% of all voters believe that Biden will make America a safer place to live. 42% disagree and think Trump will do better. So it's close. But between that 7-point lead and that 52% majority that say they don't feel more safe than they did 4 years ago, right now anyway, as it stands now at the end of June, Donald Trump has a failure, a major failure in one of his biggest justifications. 42% disagree, think Trump will do a better job. Among voters who feel less safe than they did 4 years ago, 70% believe Biden will make America safer. Just 22% express that confidence in Donald Trump. That says it all. This morning, before we came in to do the show, before I came into the office, I got word from the White House. I don't know if it's reported now, but we had some sources tell us that they're going to push back the executive order protecting monuments. That would have been a good first step. But they told us that the president wants to get it right. The legal team wants to get it right. And I would argue that's great. What the hell are your priorities, though? Why haven't you been getting it right for weeks? There have been riots and protests for weeks. There have been desecrations of national monuments for weeks. We're back to the statues being torn down. That started in Charlottesville, folks. That's what that was all about. We just moved beyond the Confederacy now. Obviously, and especially if you're a 10th Amendment conservative, you want the states and localities to be able to deal with these kinds of issues. But when you have this kind of mass disorder, that should be a priority for a law and order candidate. A week we just spent interviewing swing voters who voted for Donald Trump in 2016. They're over the empty law and order tweets. And I know Trump supporters are not going to want to hear this. And some guy, after I put it on Twitter, some guy just, retweets it with one of my buddies, Larry, who's always overly rosy. He's a Trump supporter. Always overly rosy. And just says, I think Rich is wrong about this. You think I'm wrong? Do you have anything to show, to put up against my actual work? I think you're living in a bubble. I think you are living in a very similar bubble to the ones that Hillary Clinton supporters lived in. And you better pop it quick if you want to win this election. The man's justification, law and order, was a huge deal. And it's not that it's too late, it's over. We always have, this is the nature of political analysis. We always have, somewhere in the middle of these crazy, hysterical to too calm extremes, where always somewhere in the middle is the truth. And I think we're getting a little bit carried away with some of these polls. Biden is not up in Texas. Give me a break. We've been here before. We've seen this before. And if Trump's approval rating is over 50% in a state, he's going to win it. That's ass backwards. Pardon my French. It has long been the case that incumbents who are at around 46% are in the danger zone. Why? Because there are people who do not approve. I should put it this way. There is a larger percentage of people who do not approve of incumbents that will vote for the incumbent than there is a larger percent who approve yet won't vote for him. That has always been the case. That is exacerbated under Donald Trump. We have seen that before, and we're likely to see it again. So these crazy margins where he's at 51% approval in a state, but 41% vote share, it's ludicrous. It's crazy. That's not going to happen. All right? And I'd be willing to bet, again, the Fox News decision desk like I tried to do in North Carolina. No takers, shocker. But they were wrong, and they're going to be wrong again. And I'd also note that there were also these polls, and we saw this in the summer of 2016 as well. Georgia, Texas, Hillary was going to win these states. She did not. We've been over the voter files before. Texas, for sure, though, is getting, absolutely is getting more competitive. Not only in the last 4 years, in the last 10 years, the two top growing metro areas are both in Texas. And when the census is done, you'll see just how different it is. All right. So anyway, and I hope I don't get mad at me here because he may be watching, but I wanted to show this because even liberals, and Rasmussen tweeted out just a bit ago about how it is actually true that black voters are less likely to support some of these movements. And that's absolutely true. And I wanted to show you work in one district. It's not done yet, and it's raw, but it's only going to get worse when the weights are done. The sample, I think, is sufficient enough to show voter sentiment among blacks and whites. So I'm pretty confident saying that this won't change that much. But for most Trump supporters, before I get into this graph, I'm going to show you these two graphs. Most Trump supporters will say, how could this be? Those are liberals trashing the cities. How could this be? Joe Biden gets elected. It is absolutely true that those radicals will be in charge. Joe Biden is not in control of his faculties. We're not going to play this game over here. We're not going to pretend like Joe Biden doesn't have serious problems. He does. In fact, we do. This is what will be in charge. This is not a one-off.
Unnecessarily, now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
Oh my God. 120 million dead. All right, that is not a one-off. Joe is slow. He is in the early stages of something. All right, everybody knows it, including Democrats, which is why they want to have a quasi-election. Trump is going to have to force him into a more traditional election. Because, yes, we can all laugh as much as we want. But if you're a Trump supporter, he's down to a guy with dementia. So what should that tell you, right? So 120 million are dead from COVID. Sound familiar?
Given to the gun manufacturers absolute immunity. Imagine if I stood here and said we give immunity to drug companies, we give immunity to tobacco companies. That has caused carnage on our streets. 150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. More than all the wars, including Vietnam, from that point on. Carnage on our street. And I want to tell you, if I'm elected and I'm
obviously, 150 million people were not killed from gun violence since 2007. But if they were, that's 270 in a nation of 340 million, roughly. We don't have much of a nation anymore, do we? We've been purged of 2/3 of our population, according to Joe Biden. But look, we can laugh all we want. And I know Trump supporters have a great laugh at his expense. But he absolutely is leading right now. I'm telling you, I know it because I'm polling it. He's leading. He's leading despite very liberal districts not supporting his platform and the platform of those who are trying to get him elected. This isn't done again, so this will change over the course, but it's pretty clear. More than half of the sample is in. This is a very liberal district in Michigan. And I don't want to blow it up, but this is a very liberal district in Michigan. It is 55% black in this district. So take a guess at which district this could be. Here is the question. Do you support or oppose reducing the budget for the police department in the community where you live? 58.2% oppose it. Where's the 27.8% of support coming from? Whites. The roughly third of the population in this district that is white and liberal. Most black voters so far do not. And whites are far more likely to say they support this program. Here's defund the police. 53.2%, which I found to be a little bit odd that one was higher than the other. Only 24% support it. Where is that 24% coming from? Whites, white liberals. So when people look at the polls too, another thing about what's going on with white voters here, strangely, Donald Trump's support among minorities is stronger than it was in 2016. I'm a little bit stunned. They are keeping him in the race. I'm not kidding. An increased support among working Hispanics and working black men are keeping Donald Trump in this race. It's like a crazy turn of events because white voters, particularly those white voters in the suburb, think the Mitt Romney suburb white voter, they are most likely to fear their safety in the streets right now. And Donald Trump is simply not doing enough to make them feel more comfortable, which is why I said when he did his rally in Tulsa, right, Laura? Right, Madam Producer? Turned right to her and I said, this is the wrong message. These are people who need a comforter in chief. They need a comforter in chief. They need it. Ironically, what worked for Donald Trump as a shaker of the status quo, what worked for him is now working against him in 2020. What is his greatest, any incumbent's greatest argument, especially to those voters in the middle, they don't like to rock the boat. We tell you this all the time, is now working against Donald Trump. Donald Trump is going to have to do more than this. Tweeting on Twitter, law and order in all caps, while postponing an executive order that may give people some confidence in your ability to calm this situation is just not good enough. And it sends a message to his base. Like, what the hell have you been doing for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? What are your priorities over there? There was always going to be ramifications from the COVID lockdown. And I told you guys that. There were. You cannot walk away from that. And it is true that these are coming from the left. And it is true that if Joe Biden is elected, these people who are causing this sense of fear are going to be the ones in charge. That's absolutely true. But it's also true that if you watch this show, then you're a lot more like me than you are like those voters who make up their minds at the end, who truly are persuadable. They're not going to follow Twitter constantly. They're not going to dig into the trenches on these things like we did. They'd rather binge watch the show on Netflix than turn on Tucker Carlson at 8 o'clock. That's just how it is. And in fact, I have so many members of my family who I get hooked to news because of what I do. They spend enough time around me. They get hooked on media. They get hooked on politics. It is only until I turn them into a 24/7 consumer of news that they start to that the however you want to say it, they take the red pill. Most Americans most persuadable Americans, they simply don't want to live their lives like that. And can you blame them in today's day and age? I will say this, one more thing on the polling. It is very clear, even now, here's another CNBC poll. It is very clear that these samples are being subjected to response bias. And I have been telling you guys this. I cannot conduct a poll with one mode of data collection right now, and I will not. It needs to be mixed mode. Each of the data collection methods are subject to some form of inherent bias, and you will not reach everyone if you simply use one. Like Fox News, they are a live caller only poll. It is very clear that if you look back 2 months ago, the representation of the sample for Democrats is higher in all of these polls, even though they say they're only registered voter polls. If they are registered voter polls, then it should be not much different all things being equal, than the voter analysis we showed you last week. There was only one or of two reasons that could explain an increase in the party split for one party or the other in a registered voter poll, because enthusiasm doesn't matter. That's not going to change the sample. A likely voter model has not been applied, which would change the sample. So the only two explanations are, one, response bias. You are not getting everybody that you got 2 months ago because they don't want to pick up the phone right now. And basically, two, it's part of one, is it's an artifact of the poll. It's an artifact of the data collection method. This is, again, coming from somebody who thinks Donald Trump is down. So I'm not telling you to dismiss the polls and ignore them, because that would be stupid. Don't put your life savings into one or the other if you're a political gambler, because polls aren't really particularly predictive at this point in the cycle. We've been over this before. And I just retweeted Barnes. He's right. Summer polls mean jack. I went over this with you. How many years? Almost 90 years. God, has polling really been around that long? Yeah. If you go from just the Truman upset, then that's almost 80. That's 80 something, around 80, 8 decades. 8 decades of data. And it shows you pretty clear that a candidate can open up a very big lead in the summer, only to watch it evaporate. In October, late October, Hillary Clinton still, in many of the favorite media polls, had a double-digit lead over Donald Trump. The Suffolk poll was not, I think they're affiliated with somebody differently this time around. Irrelevant, though. 10 points or better for Hillary Clinton. ABC Washington Post, 12 points on October 28th, 25th, right? Something like that. I just looked before. Point is, it's not just the summer polls. If you take out, by the way, which is they love to make, the poll defenders love to make the case that if you really look at it, they were all within the margin of error. That is not true if you take out the polls that they say they don't like. Okay? So if they take out the polls that bucked the trend, that bucked everybody else, that showed a totally different race than the ones their favorite pollsters and big media pollsters themselves were showing, if you take them out, it's a very different story looking at the averages. Take out the Gravis, which showed a closer race, but they were still wrong. Take out Patrick at Trafalgar. And suddenly Michigan looks completely out of reach. Wisconsin was completely out of reach. The Marquette University law poll was Clinton +6, the final poll. Their new one is Biden by 8. And you know what? I kind of believe that. I do. It would not surprise me, because Wisconsin is exactly the kind of state. That's why it upset everybody in 2016. They felt safer with Donald Trump. They felt like Donald Trump was going to look out for their communities and their jobs. Those are exactly those swing voters, white swing voters, that I'm talking about. And they're exactly the kind that will hand Biden an outside-sized win in their state if Donald Trump doesn't make people feel safe again, to use his term. This is not a hat patting show or a butt patting show. This is not a show, because I'm well aware the vast majority of you who watch support Donald Trump. This is not a show where I'll tell you everything's okay, give you a warm glass of milk, and send you back to your bed. That's not what we do over here. We tell the truth, regardless of who we piss off, politicians, otherwise. Madam Producer will tell all of you in the chat. I routinely get text messages from these people What the hell is wrong with you during the coronavirus crisis? What the hell is wrong with you? Get on board. I'm not on your team. I'm not on your team. I'm on the team of the American people. I will tell them the truth. And if you are a Trump supporter, you should appreciate that right now. You want someone to pat your butt, give you a warm glass of milky, and send you back to your bed. You can go to the Bill Mitchell show or whatever the hell it's called over there. He'll tell you everything he'll tell you the Republicans kept the House in 2018. Knock yourself out. That's not what we do over here. Okay? And hey, everyone, to each his own. To each his own. That's just not what we do here. Okay? That is not what we do here. And the fear is everywhere, including in today's personal income. And yeah, I see some of your messages. We are going to get into Mike Flynn, and we are going to get into how that evidence directly implicated Joe Biden. That evidence was a direct implication of both Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Joe Biden lied to George Stephanopoulos' face, and he lied to the viewers of ABC News. I really wonder how George feels about that. Not enough self-respect or decency, dignity to care when somebody blatantly lies. Hell, maybe Joe doesn't remember the January 5th meeting. I'm willing to concede it's possible that the guy doesn't have a clue anymore. When you don't know what state you're in, when you make ridiculous comments like 120 million people died from the coronavirus, then anything is possible. Anything. We don't even have to play the imagine if game with that, by the way. But imagine if Donald Trump had said something like that. Imagine if Donald Trump had made the comments that Joe Biden continues to make. They spent a year, 2 years, having people on TV saying that Donald Trump was, doctors who never examined the guy to say that his mental soundness was a real issue, that they were really concerned. That's because they were all shooting for that 25th Amendment. But oh my God, could you imagine if he gave them ammunition like this? Joe Biden's he's got problems. But it's Donald Trump's job to make sure the American people understand the relationship between those who are making them feel unsafe right now and his opponent. Because those very people will absolutely be in charge if Donald Trump loses in November. Joe Biden will not be president for long. He will not be president for long. All right? So, almost the end of this segment already. God, I'm blind, Madam Producer. I need to get my new contacts. I like the contacts that you just wear and throw out every day. But on the flip side of that, you need to go in and then redo your eye test, blah, 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 blah. And nobody will see anybody here right now because of this scared, stupid mentality over the coronavirus. We're going to have a coronavirus task force briefing, which will be different in both location and participation than the previous briefings. So obviously Trump clearly is sending a message that he does not want to go back to the days of the daily coronavirus briefing. Governor Abbott caved like a coward and slowed his reopening, even though there was nobody ever cared when it came to justifying these lockdowns. The entire argument was always that we needed to slow, not stop, slow the spread of coronavirus. And what was the point? It wasn't even lives. It was to make sure we didn't overburden our healthcare system. That was the point of all of this. It doesn't matter how many more infections you have. If your hospitals, because you're testing more, if your hospitals are not reaching capacity issues. Houston is in far worse condition than Dallas right now. And by far worse, I mean in relative terms, because they're not in a terrible condition. And yet still, the 4 biggest hospitals in Houston, the 4 hardest hit ones, are nowhere near capacity problems. Nowhere near. They can deal with this. if I had a guess, and I won't have to guess soon, J-Rock, or I'm blind. Is it J.K. Locke, right, Laura? I would say that Biden's probably nationally up about 6 points, maybe 8 on the top end, I would say. But probably I would venture to say about 6 points. And I won't have to guess soon because, like I said, I'm not pulling a lot of this out of my butt. In Florida, we return to people to re-interview them. And the Florida swing voter is clearly telling us that we elected Donald Trump to stop this. I mean, this is why, I really can't put it any more bluntly than that. That's, the one answer, which you'll read soon. It was really underscored it. We elected Donald Trump to stop this. This is what we thought we would get with Hillary Clinton. Stupid mistakes like shutting down the economy during a pandemic for the first time ever in the history of the world. It is better to do nothing than it is to make stupid decisions or the wrong decision when you don't have enough data to support the action or any action for that matter. There was never enough information to make such a drastic decision like that. He ran against the experts, guys, and there are a lot of swing voters right now who still like him. They just they would still could vote for him. They're just souring on him because they don't really see the damn difference. That's it in a nutshell. They don't see the difference. Basically what they're telling us is we thought we would get this with Hillary. We were under the impression that this is not what we would get from Donald Trump. We don't want someone who will listen to the stupid experts who got us in. He's the one who said it himself. That was his argument. The experts got us into forever wars in Iraq. The experts are managing the decline of the U.S. economy. The experts gave us the WTO. The experts gave us NAFTA. The experts hollowed out our manufacturing base. He's arguing against himself at this point. He's got to rectify this. And he's got to make some... I really do think it is time for... I don't know. I'm not going to tell the president what to do. It's his damn campaign. But it really is time for him to make some shakeups. There are people... The rumors are getting, out of control. Out of control. He needs a Bannon-like figure to balance some of the people that really don't seem to... Still, 4 years later, they, like Democrats, don't seem to understand why Donald Trump won that election. Right? Okay. Yeah, it's Freewheeling Friday. So on Freewheeling Friday, you can just throw things at me. Laura, I'll take those questions in a second. Let me just do my little spiel because I'm over the segment thing. Let me do my little spiel. Yeah, folks, it's Freewheeling Friday because I got a question about asking a question. On Freewheeling Friday, you could just lob them out there. We don't wait until the end of the segment. You could ask questions. You can offer, some countervailing point. We can have a debate on this as we talk today. All right. All right. It is about to be 10:34 on Freewheeling Friday. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me on Twitter right there if you don't already, at Peoples_Pundit. Don't forget to like the page on Facebook users. All right, stroll on over there. We'll love you for it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, the People's Pundit Daily YouTube channel, and hit that notification bar so you know when we go on. Like I said, I was going to jump on yesterday. I really was, but then Laura and I got some pictures, and I wanted to glance over. Plus, we had utilities and stuff to set up, so I couldn't. But it could be, on a Tuesday or Thursday that I just decide I want to get on because something pissed me off, or there was big news, like we're going to talk about in a little bit, Michael Flynn. And I wanted to talk about Michael Flynn yesterday. So had I been able to, I would have jumped on. So when you subscribe, hit that notification bell. All right. And then it will let you know. It'll alert you when we're going on. All right. Also, the ultimate way, of course, to support the show is to subscribe to People's Pundit Daily. That fuels it all by going to peoplespunditdaily.com, or taking the short link, ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. Okay. We have not left Florida yet. And I'll tell you what, I don't think we'll ever really leave Florida. I'll probably get a little place here because I love it. I love Florida. I really do. I just am from the north, and part of me just could not I could not let go of the need for seasonal changes. I just couldn't let go of it. Christmas time rolls around, I get freaking depressed. I want to go build a snowman with my little daughter and my son. I don't, my son has seen snow. He was just so young, he doesn't remember, but he's a cold weather lover. My daughter is not a extreme weather lover at all, whether it's hot or cold, but they really would. And I need that seasonal change. But I listened to Senator Tim Scott, who once told me, all right, I don't know if he remembers this or not, but I was complaining about heat in Florida. And he said, you're going to be a halfback. One day you're going to be a halfback. And I said, well, it's a halfback. What do you mean? And he said, it's somebody who's from the north who moves all the way down to Florida, but then they can't stand the heat. So either we, meaning South Carolina, or our neighbors to the north, North Carolina, Tom Tillis, are the benefactor of you not being able to deal with the heat after 5 to 10 years or so. So we call you guys halfbacks. You moved halfway back. You fell in love with the South, and you're not going to go back up north anyway. So I'll tell you what, folks, I will tell you this from personal experience. You are not free up north. You're not free. You can't shoot off a damn firework. You can barely own a gun. There's no way to get through that process in either New York or New Jersey anymore. When I was raised in my family lived in the 5 boroughs, for crying out loud. Yet they still love to go upstate and hunt white-tailed deer in upstate New York. They've all left because there's just you can't even do that anymore. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's no, and it takes you joining the army or something. Right, Howard? I see you. Thanks for joining Inside the Numbers, buddy. Been a long time. We need to get together soon. When you're in the army, you'll go around the South, and any military, I suppose, could do that. And I fell in love with it. I'm like, wait a minute, this is nothing like what the North tells you. Nothing. Got a personal tour of how the Union torched half of these people anyway. The North is like, look at what's going on with the Confederate statues right now. Maybe that's a conversation we should have the right way, not mob rule. But it's also not true historically that the North was some liberating force that came down here. They came down here and they were tyrants. Tyrants. They burned, they pillaged, they raped. Okay? You don't want to hear about that in the history books? Tough. All right? And by the way, we're missing this big part in our history. It is Freewheeling Friday. I'm off on a tangent today. We're missing this big part of our history where everybody seems to think we went from the Civil War to Jim Crow. That's not what happened. And we went from the Civil War to very progressive governments in the South, where even black lawmakers held positions in state governments. We were progressing, but the radicals wanted to punish the South. Lincoln was killed, Grant was plagued by corruption, and they got their way through basically incompetency and corruption. And they made the South pay. They instituted programs like the GAR pension scheme. A tax was akin to slavery for these people. And yet they taxed only the South to pay for a pension program scam, which was a scam. It was a scheme. It was like the country's first Social Security-like pyramid scheme. It was called the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, and taxed only people in the South, depending whether they were veterans or not, and they were not eligible to receive the pension. Things like that. Public policy coupled along with, I won't forget it. Public policy coupled along with radical behavior. Abraham Lincoln wanted to forgive the South. Abraham Lincoln wanted us to look back on the South as our brothers and sisters, and he wanted to welcome them back. But he was killed. And we had a period during Reconstruction where it was punish, 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 punish. It was horrible. Learn your real history. And then it was only then when white South said, this is ridiculous, I've had it. And they elected what were called redeemer governments. They were going to redeem the integrity of the South. Unfortunately, there were really nothing but a bunch of racists, and they instituted Jim Crow throughout the South. It was not that we went from the Civil War and nothing changed to the era of Jim Crow, which had to fight our way to civil rights in the 50s and 60s. That is bull. We were progressing, but people just couldn't let it go. They had to punish the South. And Lincoln's death allowed them to do that. And Grant was a great military man. He was a horrible everything else. He couldn't make it in the private sector, and he really wasn't a good politician. All right, let's get into some of these questions here. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, Liz wants to know, do you think older folks know that it's the Dems causing the riots? Absolutely not. Many of them don't know. That is a great question, because we are polling that right now somewhere else. They have no clue. Many of them have absolutely no clue. Typically, campaigns will try, when there's something like this, the Trump campaign will try to tie Biden and the Biden campaign to it, but they don't want to be overtly the ones doing it, so they try to let surrogates do it. That's crap. You don't have time for that. This is a new era anyway of politics. I heard one of my buddies talk about why he thinks Trump's right to do that on his show, his Scope, the other day. And I listened to it. I respect his opinion. He's wrong. Biden's campaign staffers anyway are involved. So it's not like you're making this huge jump. That's crazy. All right. Let's see. I know Laura will help me out here. Trevor says, interesting that would cause swing voters to change course when Biden is the same as Hillary. Listen, you know what it is, Trevor? Like I said, most Americans don't focus on this stuff like a laser beam like we do. They just don't, especially those swing voters. They just don't want the boat rocked. That's it. They just want to live their life. They want safety. They want prosperity. And they don't want the boat rocked. That usually works to the advantage of an incumbent. And why I was telling people pre-coronavirus crap, pre-COVID panic, that no matter what you see from the polls, it doesn't really matter what Trump's approval rating is. Come October, and it will shift very quickly in the final couple of weeks, and he will win because he is the incumbent, and it is 3% or greater GDP growth. It really can be that simple. And those voters would have went into the ballot box and they would have said, yeah, he's crazy. He's a crazy guy. He's a crazy president, but he's our president, and the economy's doing well. The country is safe. The ISIS caliphate has been destroyed, blah, 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 blah. And by the way, the left knows it. For all of their lying on TV and their gloating and their harping on polls, the smart ones damn well know, and so do my election forecast competitors who will remain nameless on the show, they damn well know that I was right and was telling you the truth the entire time. They can't find me a single incumbent president who lost with a prosperous economy outside of wartime. That's it. They can't do it because they know what I'm telling you about these voters are true. Unfortunately, they're not up on things. They don't watch things like we watch them. So those are the voters that campaigns have to talk to and speak to. And what I'm saying right now is that Trump is just not doing a good job speaking to them. He's not. And he's letting these things go on. He's letting this crap go on. And those voters don't know. And that's all. You can't strike at the heart of somebody's justification like that. If you're a candidate, you cannot allow your opponent to do that. That's why I spent a whole show on presidential justifications. It matters. It matters. It goes to the narrative that ultimately defines the election and what the election was about. When sophologists go back and look at it, that's what they try to determine. Well, what was this election really about? 2016, the forgotten man and woman, make America great again. He's allowing them to take a justification. The COVID pandemic was, of course, a scam to slice his Achilles heel. I'm not saying the pandemic is in a scam. I'm talking about the reaction, as if Democratic governors were not going to abuse their power and do everything they could to hurt the economy. Of course they were, folks. I can't believe some of my friends with their hundreds of thousands of followers and blue checks fell for that crap. Like, I can't believe after everything we've seen, you wouldn't know that, of course, they were going to do that. And never in the history of the world can you show me where a country reacted like this during a pandemic. And you think our founders didn't know disease? Of course they did. They knew disease worse than we did. We have not been forced to live under conditions like they were. We're just not as strong as them. We're not. Morally, when it comes to morals, resolve, in our beliefs and our convictions, they were stronger people. Sorry. It's just true. All right, let me go back and see. Laura, you do like such a great job going back and getting these for me, because number one, I'm freaking blind. You all know that. Number two, I just can't see it. It goes so quick. All right. Yeah, but so that's a really good question though, Trevor, but that's why I spend all that time, on this, but Howard, is it true that a majority of the donations to BLM will go directly to the DNC? Listen, this is something everybody should know. These groups ally with something called Share Blue, I believe it is. They process these payments. The right is not very good at this. A lot of these causes that you'll see, if it goes through that company, they process the payment and then they will give it to candidates and parties and committees anyway, and pieces of it anyway. So yes, if you donate to some of those causes, you're essentially supporting that party that aligns with it. They raised a ton of money, and eventually it will fall in the hands of the DNC. I mean, it's just that. Yeah, you have to be careful, because they did this in 2018 too. It was like we caught Bill Nelson in Florida. He was saying, we're raising money for victims of Hurricane, I think it was Dorian, right, Laura? Dorian. We're raising money for the victims of the hurricane. By the way, the Panhandle was one of the biggest areas that were hit for this hurricane. So maybe it wasn't Dorian, but they were doing that and saying, donate. It's a charity. But they were having them process those payments. And they take a piece of that charitable contribution and they give it to political campaigns. Important. Bill Nelson did it in 2018. They have a really good scam going. It's a grift, but it's a legal grift, thanks to crooked and incompetent politicians on both sides of the aisle. The right does nothing about this. They do nothing about it. They don't even have the moral courage. They are moral cowards. Did you see the poll? Let's show it again real quick before I go and take more questions. Look at this. This is a liberal district. Look at it. They don't support this crap. But Republicans are cowards. And by the way, Black Americans are less likely than the white liberal to support it. Why? Because white guilt, white privilege. You're supposed to, believe all of this stuff. And you're supposed to feel guilty for being white. You're supposed to feel guilty for calling 911. God forbid. You read that article in the New York Times. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm referencing. This poor guy, he gets mugged. And then he feels guilty that he called the police on the black guys who mugged him, because he said, I subjected them to real risk of death now. I can't live with myself. That's sick. You're sick, man. Mentally, you're sick. And we have collectively created mental disorders. It's crazy. If this country goes, the people who watch it after a couple hundred years they're going to be like, wow, what a bunch of idiots. They blew it. Stupid idiots. They were like collectively disturbed. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Let's see where else we go. All right. I got that one, Laura. I got that one. All right, here's another one. Do I think Pascal will be fired? No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think he deserves to be fired. I just don't. I just think he's not a political guy. And we've gone over this before, guys. Brad is, I'm sure, a very bright data guy. Act Blue. Thank you, Tweety Bird. Act Blue. Thank you. Thank you for grabbing that. I wanted to make sure I got that right. Was it Act Blue or Shared Blue or something? It's Act Blue. And Republicans or the people on the right have a counter to that. They just don't do it like they do it. There's Win Red, but they don't go and try to get, they don't try and exploit events like that, like the death of George Floyd or a hurricane. I mean, they would never do something like that. Well, maybe not never. I'm just saying I have not seen them do. If you got examples of it, give them to me. I'll blast them to hell too. But I just haven't seen it. And then Ilhan Omar is another one. She's constantly raising for some charity, and it turns out to be not a total fraud, but she's always putting her hand in the cookie jar. And I don't think that he should be. I don't think Brad should be fired. I'm saying that the team doesn't have right now. That I personally think they're lacking two things. And you know what? As Laura knows, I don't usually like criticizing people professionally. It's just not. But I mean, we're at a point now where it is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. There's no Bannon-like figure to contradict what's her name, who has a lot of power in the campaign, and you never hear about her. She's like de facto. Ned Ryan brought it up the other day, and it was funny because somebody had just told me that, and I'm like, no, that can't be right. Rumors swirl, people. Rumors swirl. He has no Bannon figure who really truly understands his coalition. And again, why does that matter? Donald Trump knows the people. He understands the American people. Trump's instincts are good. They're great. They're sharp. They're better than anybody I've ever seen in politics. The problem is he's not listening to them. That's his problem. He's listening to the very experts that he said were stupid and shouldn't be listened to. And that's where he went wrong. They fundamentally changed. They fundamentally shifted the ground and the framework of the 2020 campaign between COVID and George Floyd. It's, it is what it is. Eric, I can't answer that yet before I don't want you know what though, that'll be the next question. All right. But yeah, I mean, that really is the issue. There's nobody like Bannon to advocate for that. So, when somebody says, you know what, we should do this, we should do that, I really do believe if Bannon was still around, he would have made a more stronger case against listening to the so-called public health experts. I mean, he was in a tight position. It was difficult. But at this point now, they've really shown themselves to be the two-faced hacks they are. I mean, you cannot tell people they can't protest trying to survive and make a living and then release, joint statements here and there and everywhere saying that you support the protests for George Floyd and race relations because COVID is racist and racism actually causes coronavirus, didn't you know? That's crazy. You can't do it. And for him to even give these people any kind of entertainment right now to entertain these thoughts is just unbelievable. I mean, was he, maybe the executive order today isn't getting signed because energy that could have been used to going toward that was being expelled on other things, maybe like the work that went into the press conference today. Look, folks, it's about priorities. And I think Brad is a very smart data guy, but he's not a political guy. He's not. Otherwise, he would have known not to hype expectations during a pandemic at a rally. He would have known that. He would have told the president, forget about unicorns like New Mexico if we're running ahead nationally, because I don't think it's going to be very difficult for a Republican to win the popular vote going forward. It's just, that's a trend. That wasn't a one-off. That's a trend. And if Joe Biden wins, it's going to obscure that trend. But I really do believe that's just a matter of census data. It's not an opinion. And when the 2020 census comes out, you'll all see what I'm talking about. But anyway, going forward, he's just not a political guy. If they were ahead nationally, that would mean that Trump is so strong in the battleground states, you could start looking at other states like New Mexico. But he's talking about unicorns. It's unicorns at this point, man. Shore up Ohio, for crying out loud. And no, I don't think Donald Trump is down in Ohio. I know I'm getting that question at something. I just don't. I don't believe the Biden +1. Ohio is very difficult to poll. We screwed it up. The highest we ever had was Trump +5. Our final was Trump +3. The southeastern part of the state is a real trick, man. It's a real trick. Those, especially white Democrats down there, white working class Democrats, we just didn't expect them to vote that heavily for him and disproportionately. And I would refer you to the 2018 polling blunders that were in Ohio. Not a single poll in the end had Mike DeWine winning that race. Sherrod Brown was going to win it, but he was never going to win it by those margins. That was crazy. And only one poll, which was the NBC Marist poll, ever showed Mike DeWine with a small, tiny lead, 2 points. And it was in the summer, I think in July, late July. And they quickly herded with the crowd. They quickly herded and it went back to Cordray plus $1 million. All right, talk. Okay, hit me up. Give me the questions, Laura. Okay, go ahead. Blast them out of me. That's her way of telling me to shut up. All right. How many did I miss already? There was one, though, that I really wanted to answer that was good. What was it about, guys? Come on, remind me here. We were talking about Brad. Oh, and I would just say this. John McLaughlin polls for him to wrap up the question with that. Somebody should be, look, presidential campaigns have enough money. I would really like to see some other opinions, is my point. All right. They were pro-lockdown? Yeah, well, that's actually a little bit, I don't watch it. A little bit shocking to me. But point, though, that the whole idea from that, though, is that Bannon, he's the only advisor who really understood the Trump coalition. The rest of them really didn't. And that's why when that Access Hollywood tape came out, they all wanted to curl up in the feeble position, have Donald Trump bow out of the race, put Pence at the top of the ticket. They really wanted to do that. And Bannon was the only one who said, the voters who are going to put you in office don't give a rat's about this. The polls will get ugly for a little bit and you will bounce back. And that's what happened, but he was for smashing the curve rather than, and that's another thing, because I saw that question before. It was never about stopping infections. That was never the point of any of this. The point was to slow the spread so we didn't collapse our healthcare system. Our hospitals weren't overrun. And now here we are again. Yeah, I'm saving Flynn, just that question. Maybe it was with something with Flynn, but I am saving the Flynn segment until after the break, which is in a minute or so. I wanted to go over the story and then take a look at some of Peter Strzok's scribbled little notes, but that's it. So I'll wait on that since we're there at the, I don't think anybody should replace anyone. I just think that there's nobody right around Trump right now who's speaking for those men and women who put him in office. That's my point. All right. Let's go through the, okay. That's it. That's it. Eric, let's answer your question. It was about Kentucky. If the ballots were postmarked Monday and are received by Saturday, they will be counted. So we can't answer that yet because tomorrow is the deadline for ballots to get in. I am reluctant to say anything until those ballots come in, because as you guys full well know full well, I absolutely think that this process will be abused, and abused significantly. In 2018, I saw some things that frankly made zero sense. And I think it's going to be like that on steroids this time. So I'm very reluctant, and which is why I was reluctant with California 25 to say, you know what, looks good for Mike Garcia, looks good for Berg, whatever. I'm very reluctant to say that because you'll never know what they want to do. All right, Michael, I'll get to your question after the break. I need a quick break, all right? 2 minutes. We're going to play Bad Habit, 2 minutes. And when I come back, I'll hit up those questions and I'll review them, all right? But yeah, I need to drink some water, right? Do what you got to do. All right, folks, it is almost 11:01 on Freewheeling Friday, June 26th. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris. You guys can follow me right there on Twitter if you don't already, at Peoples_Pundit. I'm going to take a break, 2 minutes, and I'll see you back on the flip side.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends, and spread a little love just for a little fun? I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be. I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. There's rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love. Because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to disappear overnight, just to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Killing me, Smalls. You're killing me. All right. I'll answer the questions. I'll get to the questions quickly. All right. I'll answer some right now. How about that? Before we go into Michael Flynn, I'll answer some of the questions. All right. That was the theme song, Bad Habit, by the Grammy-nominated band Bowen, which you will find in the description if you want. If you guys have anybody you want to see showcased during the commercials we are cutting, all right, then don't forget, contact at peoplespunditdaily.com. Contact at peoplespunditdaily.com. And we mean people who aren't already out there. There's a lot of great talent out there. We're the People's Pundit, not Hollywood's Pundit, right? All right. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and hit that little notification bell. let you know when we go live. Don't forget to like the page on Facebook if you are a Facebook user. We'll love you for it. And ultimately, the best way to support the show is to subscribe to peoplespunditdaily.com. And you can do that by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. So wrap up that answer, though, in Kentucky. I am reluctant until those ballots come in on Saturday, so I can't really answer that yet. All right. What happened with Trump designating Antifa as a terrorist organization? He must do something because Americans are losing faith in the strength and willingness in his faith and the strength and willingness to stand up to people like this. Absolutely. That is the point of the first segment, that they are losing that faith. They can't truly. All right. Anything that Trump did to designate Antifa, unless he goes through the State Department, can easily be undone by Joe Biden if he wins and then is inaugurated in January. All right. He needs to go through the State Department. That's something Mike Pompeo and they designate terror organizations. All right. Even though you'll see DHS and others say, this is a terrorist organization, the FBI, an actual, because it's not just a domestic organization, an actual designation needs to come from the executive branch agencies like the State Department. Okay. So he does need to do something about it because, as we saw with the Rasmussen poll this morning, 49% think that Joe Biden is more capable of dealing with this, making them safer, feel safer. 42% say Donald Trump. 52% of likely voters believe they are less safe than they were 4 years ago. That is a catastrophe for Donald Trump, and that explains his poll numbers right now. All right. Okay. I don't understand how mail-in ballots is going to work with absentee ballots. That's a great question, because the way that both the right and left talk about this is wrong, and it's very confusing. It adds confusion to it. The way Trump does it, he steps on the actual message. He does. He kills his own. He kills his own point. So there's not much of a difference between what they're trying, and that's what the left will tell you. That, take a state like Florida, Republicans have always loved absentee ballot voting. What's the, what's the difference? The difference here is that Democrats want everybody who is registered and on the rolls to get a ballot. This is a great question, because we have got to start spreading the truth about this. The real difference is that Democrats want to do three things. Differently. They want everyone to get a ballot, not just those who have requested it. They want to remove the verification procedures that are in place in most state laws, which is like in Florida, signature verification, things like that. All right, we have to go down to our supervisor of elections. We get our ID out. We show them our ID. We sign a little pad. They look at your license. They see your signature on your license. They try to match it up, make sure that it's you with your ID. That is a verification procedure. Democrats don't want that. And then the third thing they want to do, even in states where ballot harvesting is illegal, they want, at the expense of taxpayers, to fund ballot harvesters for the election. So again, they want everyone, no matter whether you are dead, no matter whether you are an inactive voter, and no matter whether you have a change of address flag, they want you to get a ballot so their ballot harvesters can go out and make sure that they return the ones that grandpa who's been dead for 10 years obviously cannot return. There's no other explanation for wanting to remove the verification procedures, especially when you couple it with ballot harvesting. And even if those ballot harvesters aren't there, the supervisor of elections and their team, and if you think this is beneath them, you're naive. They could do it. And in Florida, that's been a major problem here, a major problem. Republicans are trailing in absentee ballot requests right now in Florida, even though Democrats only have a 2-point registration edge. That is the lowest since partisan tracking began in the state in 1972. The reason why, and we polled them and we asked them, they don't trust it. Now, that's partly because of Donald Trump. That's absolutely true. That story in Politico with Mark Caputo, absolutely true. But another part is the behavior of Democrats themselves. In 2016, widespread reporting. Brenda Snipes, alone in Broward County, refused to follow rules and would open absentee ballots before supervision was present. About 150,000 absentee ballots were opened without following the rules, without following the law. And the laws that were put in place in Florida were bipartisan election reform laws after the Hanging Chad disaster in 2000. And now Democrats want to undo all of that. Again, there is no explanation, no valid or credible explanation for them to send out ballots to everyone, because what is this saying? If you guys are repeat viewers, you know what I'm about to say. Being registered to vote in the United States of America is not the same as being eligible to vote. That is true in many, many states. And I showed you several of them. Clark County alone, they did already for the primary. In Clark County alone, they sent out 200,000 ballots that were deceased, change of address, or inactive. The Journal Review was reporting how ballots were littering the streets. They were posted to corkboards in apartment complexes. That is third world crap. And there is no way any of us could trust the election result if this is the way this is going to be. And by the way, ballot harvesting is illegal in the state of Nevada. And yet, Democrats pressured the Clark County Register, and they caved to that pressure to spend $100 and something thousand on ballot harvesters. All right. Yeah, that's a main part of the issue, and this is for Aussie Nick. When it's not just absentee ballots, what Trump does is he kills it. He kills the argument by saying things that are really just not true. It's more than just, they want to do absentee ballots and you can't trust absentee ballots. It's that they want to remove the verification procedures. They want to send them to people who shouldn't get them. There's a reason why we only send them out to those who request them, because if you're dead, you're not going to request it. If you moved and you're no longer eligible to vote there, you won't request it, or at least hopefully, right? The vast majority of people won't. And if you're inactive, you just don't want to vote, you don't vote, you won't request it. They want all of these ballots to go out. Why? So they can fill them in later. Obviously, or get their ballot harvesters to do it. There's no honest explanation. And I will debate anybody on this issue, on the left, whatever. They are doing it to cheat. I am very confident in saying that. Philadelphia alone could swamp his margin of victory. That's how many dead people, how many change of address flags, how many inactives vote. They're everywhere. I've showed them to you guys on the voter database how many times now. They're everywhere. It's not correct what Trump is saying, and all he's doing is removing the enthusiasm for older voters. And why does that matter? Well, come the election in Florida, their voter base is older, number one, and number two, that means you have to get that many more people out on election day. You got to turn out that many more people. Right now, they're about 300,000 lagging. That's a lot. That's a lot of people to try to turn out on election day. All right, Laura, give them to me. All right. Let me, yeah, that's another one. That's a great point. It's not beneath them. You can see these arrests are happening. The election judge in Philadelphia, in a ward in Philadelphia, was just pled guilty to it. He's cooperated. The consultant, the Democratic consultant that bribed him to do it, he's cooperating with the FBI. There's more. There's more. And these were elections that happened in 2016 and 2018. Of course they'll do it. We cannot rely on the virtue and morality of elected or appointed election officials. Absolutely not. Look at what these people are willing to do in everything else. All right. Hey, ranked choice voting question. Would it make your job harder, and would it just be a bad idea in general? It already cost Republican the House seat. They technically won. You're talking about in Maine, correct? Ranked choice voting is a horrible issue. I can't believe this is like something it has been heard before certain courts, but this is something Republicans should take to the Supreme Court probably, because I've heard arguments on both sides. I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds unconstitutional to me. Ranked choice voting is when you vote for your first choice and then your second choice. So while in Maine, technically the Republican won that election, he didn't win a majority. And if you don't win 50 plus 1, then you're subject to the rank. And that's when your multiple choices can be put together. And that's not, so that is not going to be, I just personally think it's stupid. In nowhere does it say that in the Constitution that it has to be a majority if there are more people. Because what Democrats did in 2018 and what they will do going forward is run and support a ton of these independent, so-called independent candidates. If there's a lot of research, which Democrats are fully aware of, if you put an independent on the ballot, independent voters voting for them and voters in general who are voting for them are more likely to vote for the Republican when they're not on the ballot. So ranked choice is a way to get around that for them. And it would make our job harder, because if we're trying to call an election, we would have to say, well, this is what we predict is going to happen in the first round, and this is what's going to happen in the second round. It's kind of ridiculous. It's why caucus polling, by the way, is so bad, because after you have to go through the re-caucus process, it changes the results significantly. That was a great question. What else would we get? You got more for me? Should be trusted to head up the overall campaign. I don't want to answer that. I don't want to answer that, Laura. I don't want to give people, I don't want to tell either whether it's Biden or, Trump. I'm not in that business. I mean, I would just say Trump. I would say that. Ultimately, anyone who has worked for him would tell you the same thing anyway, that he's the ultimate decision maker. He's the one who goes over all of the decisions anyway. So the real issue is not who's making that final decision, because that's always Donald Trump. The real issue is whether or not there's enough voices around him to give him the dose of medicine that if a voter had the presidency, or what would the voters say to do? I just don't see that in the Trump campaign. And the Biden campaign doesn't really need that, because they have the media doing their work for them. It's more that it's a media handicap, and it's also the media trying to make this a quasi-election. Everybody gets mailed ballots, whether you're dead or not. And then the campaigns aren't going to campaign the traditional way they'll do it. The media will tell Joe Biden's story for him, because he can't remember how old he is, right? I mean, you guys want to laugh at Joe Biden again real quick? Look at Barack Obama's face.
Mass migration, disruptive impacts of technology, strengthen the global health security, stop the Cold War future that we're talking about. We're talking about a peaceful Cold War. What are we talking about?
I don't know, Joe. What the hell are you talking about, right? That's the thing that they're trying to get away. He can't tell his story. He can't campaign. He can't he can't deliver his justification to the American voters. The media needs to do that for him. And they are. And they're doing, this is working. Absolutely is working. And that's why Brad's mess up with that rally, doing what he did, overhyping expectations. Yes, it's true Black Lives Matter was blocking the entrance. I know that. Yes, it's true that Black Lives Matter is going to scare away. So have you ever gone to a Trump rally? Some of these people are just decent people. Not some of them. These are like decent. Some of them are older. It's not just COVID they got to worry about. They're not going to deal with the mob, those kinds of people. They're not going to want to deal with him. And then, of course, you have the coronavirus pandemic. His crowd was huge for a COVID situation. It was still huge. The problem was that it was overhyped. That's it. All right. What else we got here, Laura? Oof. That's a good question. And I'm not sure that we totally know. So the question is, how much will the Green Party and no Gary Johnson help Trump? Well, the people who back the Green Party this year, the Socialist Party of America, the communists, straight up admitted communists, they've already said that they will not be supporting or pushing their own candidate forward, and that if somebody like that was to run for the Green Party, that they will not back them like they really, some of those groups did get behind Jill Stein. They're not going to do that this time. They understand beating Donald Trump is more important than their own philosophy. That's what, they're basically trying to say, but it's more than that. Those groups are already running Joe Biden. If Joe Biden wins, Joe Biden's not going to be in charge. It's a sad commentary, but it's absolutely true. If Joe Biden wins this election, those people will be in charge anyway. There's no reason for them to try to siphon off 2 or 3% of the vote from Joe Biden. They're not going to do it this time. And then Gary Johnson, I believe, this is why Justin Amash is not making the push that he was thinking of making. Gary Johnson was a uniquely strong libertarian candidate. I really do believe that. We've had other libertarians running in state level races. They just didn't do that good. Gary Johnson pulled a lot of votes from Donald Trump in some areas, and in some areas he pulled younger votes that otherwise would have went for Hillary Clinton. Now, I've told people before, it's dangerous to look at Gary Johnson's margin in some of these states and just assume that they would have went to Donald Trump. We can make a clear case for that in a state like Colorado. We can. We can make a clear case for that in New Mexico. We can't do that everywhere. And I've seen people do that, but I would warn you, I would very much, warn you against doing that. There are reports that some people are getting ballots in the mail for every person who's historically lived at that address. Basically, are these reports true? Giving back decades. You want to see something? I got it. And I'm sorry, Labor Conservative, I don't have your hat tip plugged into the system here. But I got this. He lives in Michigan, and he's not the first one to send me something like this, but it was one of the clearest pictures. Look at this. This is, he said, basically 20 years worth of people who lived at his address. And this is in, Macomb, either Macomb or Oakland, but I'm going to say I'm 95% sure he lives in Macomb County. These are people who no longer live there. This is why they have a change of address flag. There have already been people who have admitted to authorities that they have filled in during primaries these ballots. If this guy was a low character person, and he is not, although he said, I'll be honest, man, I was tempted, he could fill in 4 ballots right now easily. And there's more. And that's in Macomb, one of the 12 counties Donald Trump flipped in Michigan that Barack Obama carried. And he barely won it. He barely won it. So if you think they look at what these people have shown they are willing to do, resist Trump at all cost. There has been no profession, from lawyers, from the legal system to the media, data journalism to financial reporting, public health to anything, like we did in that show, The Perversion of Science and Data. There is no profession. There is no profession where the urge to resist hasn't shown to been greater. I mean, has shown greater, than somebody's morals and character. They are willing to break the rules. Absolutely. They're willing to leak top secret documents. There's nothing these people won't do. I'm telling you. Absolutely, they will do it. Yeah, it should not be another 2016-like campaign. No. Americans want to move forward, always. Barack Obama's re-election campaign slogan was genius. Just one word, forward. He knew he couldn't say, we brought the economy back and it's roaring. He couldn't say that. He knew he couldn't say, we took all the troops home. So he had to deal with having a weak record, but it was a record at least where he could say, I got an economy that was in the doldrums. I saved the auto industry. What? General Motors is alive. Osama bin Laden is dead. Remember that? That was a great line. And he wrapped all of that up with the way to skirt that the record was bad. It was the weakest record of economic growth anybody since Roosevelt. It was abysmal. But he just said, but we're headed in the right direction. Forward. Americans don't like looking back. That's something Joe Biden could hurt Joe Biden. The problem is he's flipping that on Donald Trump. He has his de facto militia on the streets causing chaos. These people are an arm of the Democratic Party. There's no doubt. He has his governors willing to stifle the economic comeback. So they're using these tools at their disposal to rock the boat. So it's taking away Trump's ability to say, forward. We're making America great again. It's taking away his justification. He needs to end it, and end it now, or he has no chance. I'm telling you. I am telling you. That is the only thing that could cost him the election. That's really it. All right. Look at the YouTube questions. Yeah, he does have it. Absolutely, he has a chance. Absolutely. Look. And this is for Jim. It is early, Jim. Summer polls don't mean much. I'm saying this from the big picture point of view. So from the election forecast models point of view, polling does not move it that much. It's one of many variables. Early polling like this has no predictive value. Again, I don't know if you missed the earlier part of the show, but I'll repeat it. In late October, Hillary Clinton still had a double-digit lead over him. If you took out Patrick, if you took out Doug out of the RCP averages, he had no chance in Michigan. He had no chance in Wisconsin. They were not close races. If you take out the people who the big media says is not a gold standard pollster. In 2018, the state level polling was no better. So it's not really the polls that's driving me to say this. It's that I know what makes the narrative of an election. I can see it happening. And often it's hard to tell what it is. Most people who are like election historians or psephologists, they'll look at it after the election happens to try to find it. My job and why I've beaten the competition is because I see what it is before. And I'm looking at it now. And I'm telling you, it's not good if he doesn't turn it around. It's not the polls. I don't really care what the polls have to say, right now. I just don't. Look, Quinnipiac had Hillary Clinton up by like 18 points or something. It's crazy. The ABC News, Washington Post tracking poll not even at this point, next week. Oh no, I'm sorry. The tracking poll didn't come out until later. But it was bad for Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. It really, a lot of this too is response bias, and there's almost no profession where they're not willing to at least put their thumb on the scale a little bit, But yeah, I this is to make you feel like he doesn't have a chance. I'll tell you that. All right. You think people don't see that the Dems are what the Dems are? No, the people that matter, and I don't mean that some people matter more than others. The people that are persuasive, and I think it's Gadget Freak or something who asked this. The people who are persuadable, the people who feel, feel the impact of this more, what we've been discussing. The people that Rasmussen is trying to highlight in the poll today. They don't pay attention to this stuff like we do. It's up to Donald Trump and his campaign to tie Joe Biden and the Democrats to what you see on the ground. And so far, they've really not done that. They have not done that well. And the media has gotten a little bit wise to how Donald Trump can suck all the oxygen out of the room and control the narrative. They've gotten wise to it. So they're not allowing him to do it. And the only thing that can get around that is the rally. And look, they took that away from him. And the one that he did have, the return to the trail rally, Brad screwed up. By hyping those expectations. They need to stop hyping those expectations. Everybody knows, and there's plenty of ways to say that the enthusiasm is with the president, because it is. Move the rallies outside, stop hyping it up. Move the rallies outside, make it damn clear to people. We're going to be checking temperatures, giving out hand sanitizers. Make sure to bring a mask. You want to wear a mask, feel better. That should have been the focus, not him touting how many tickets were requested for the rally. It was a really, really, data guy move, not a political guy move. All right. I'll answer one more before we do our thing. You guys are asking some really good questions. Would Dems usually win I imagine that means popular vote, because of urbanization in the future, as you implied, make the case for Electoral College stronger, or would it make people against it more? I tend to think that if you look at the Electoral College views on the Electoral College, party has a lot to do with what people say. It's so true. Republicans at one point thought that Al Gore was going to, take the election from George Bush. And then when, of course, we all know what happened. He only won Florida George Bush won Florida by only a few hundred votes. And then he ended up losing the popular vote. So sentiment changed. And Democrats believed that the popular vote, and then it should dictate it. Then in 2004, George W. Bush won the popular vote pretty handily against John Kerry, but he barely won re-election. Barely. It really came down to a couple thousand evangelicals in Iowa. And so Republicans said the popular vote, it goes back and forth. Now, it's pretty clear that Republicans understand the Electoral College issue in a way they didn't before, while Democrats, they just don't give a damn about it. It's another institution they view as a throwback to a bygone era of racism and white superiority. So that is what fuels their desire to get rid of it as much as the urbanization of America, right? So I will say this: if they succeed, the chances of conflict go higher, because armed violent conflict, like a civil war, because that is what the founders were trying to avoid with the Electoral College. They understood that one party could dominate a state the way they did in California, by the way, open it up to immigration, and then get, and then chip the balance of everything. They understood that. And that the smaller states, because the system would no longer work for them anymore, they'd have no choice but to take up arms. That was the entire point of the Electoral College. All right. I'll answer some more questions in a bit here, Laura, but I want to get to the Flynn decision and then talk about, really briefly, talk about what happened with, with Biden, because I have to read the whole story to recap it before I get in and I show you Strzok's notes. All right. So let's talk about this real quick, and I will come back and answer more questions. Laura, make sure we got 10 minutes before that. Okay. All right. The appeals court in D.C. orders Judge Emmet Sullivan to dismiss Michael Flynn case. Peter Strzok's notes reveal Crossfire Razor was ordered by Barack Obama. Joe Biden suggested using the Logan Act to persecute Michael Flynn. All right. Washington, D.C., BBD. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia ordered District Judge Emmet Sullivan to approve the Justice Department motion to dismiss the case against Michael Flynn. The 2-1 ruling granted a writ of mandamus. By the way, obviously, Democrat appointed dissent. 2 Republican appointments were the majority. The majority opinion, if you have time to read it, I strongly suggest you do. It was thorough, just, and they even took time to demolish the minority opinion, the dissent. They even took time. There were 3 points specifically in the dissent. They demolished it. If you have time, it'll take you about 5 minutes probably to read it, but it's worth reading. All right. Anyway, the 2-1 ruling granted the writ, which is basically an order for a government official to carry out their duty, a duty. So if a government agency is being, if a government official or agency is being derelict, that is basically the orders telling them to do your damn job. All right. In May, the Justice Department revealed it was dropping its case against Lieutenant General Flynn, the first and former national security advisor to President Donald J. Trump. The development came after, quote, newly and discovered and disclosed information, unquote, that raised serious concerns about the nature of the investigation, which led to special counsel Robert Mueller. U.S. Attorney Jeff Jensen recommended dropping the case after a review of the 2 tranches of documents totaling 15 pages. The first 4 unsealed documents contained clear evidence the investigation and prosecution, codename Razor, was a setup for a perjury trap. The documents, which were inappropriately withheld from the defense, contained handwritten notes from Bill Priestap. We told you it was Bill Priestap at the time. And now that's been reported, but we knew it was. Then the Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Division for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The notes state agents aimed, quote, to get him, Flynn, to lie so we can prosecute him or get him fired, unquote. On January 24th, 2017, federal agents interviewed Lieutenant General Flynn under false pretenses and without counsel about a conversation he had with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. Now, I know everybody says, yeah, we know this, Rich. We know this. It's important because of the new information. At the time of the conversation, Lieutenant General Flynn was the top foreign policy advisor to the then president-elect. So he was not a civilian. The Logan Act, by the way, was written during a period early in the early republic where they had to make sure that people weren't going to pose as diplomats. That was the focus of that. All right. The note taker wrote that one objective of the interview was to, quote, get Flynn to admit breaking the Logan Act. Where did he get that idea from? A 1799 law widely viewed as unconstitutional. It intends to prohibit private citizens from speaking with foreign governments about official U.S. public policy, but has never been successfully used in a prosecution against anyone ever. Everyone believes and knows that it's unconstitutional, but also outdated, and the need for it is pointless. You could pick up a phone and verify somebody's ID now. The point of the law was, years ago, you could get on a ship, take a month to get across the pond where you're going, and pose as a diplomat. But Judge Sullivan refused and took unusual, unprecedented steps to keep the case from being dismissed. He ordered a hold on the motion and instead appointed retired Judge John Gleeson to look a Trump hater and a Flynn hater who commented by the way, to look at whether Lieutenant General Flynn could be held in criminal contempt for perjury. How? He admitted to it when he was making his plea deal. Unbelievable. The Justice Department disclosed to the court separate handwritten notes from fired FBI agent Peter Strzok. They detail how Crossfire Hurricane was ordered by then President Barack Obama and then Vice President Joe Biden in the Oval Office on January 5th, 2017. Remember the Rice email, folks, where she memorialized that meeting that we went over? And Joe Biden told George Stephanopoulos that he had nothing to do with this prosecution. He knew nothing about any of this. Then it was revealed that he unmasked him. I don't know. I don't remember anything. He was lying. We know it from the details now. Before all of this, we had one reference to the White House about wanting to be in the loop on everything. All right. And now we're getting more, and it's painting a very clear picture. In fact, the notes from Mr. Strzok reveal it was Mr. Biden himself who suggested using the Logan Act to persecute Lieutenant General Flynn. Former fired FBI Director James Comey even acknowledged the calls with Ambassador Kislyak appear legit. Again, Comey told them at that meeting that there was nothing wrong with those phone conversations. The content of the conversation was totally valid and legal. Yet, Biden still believed it was a good idea to use the Logan Act to go after him. And then he lied to George Stephanopoulos' face and to the viewership at ABC News. Why? Because the media is not going to hold him accountable for it. George is a hack. Earlier in June, Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe made public the transcripts from the wiretap phone calls between Flynn and Kislyak. If you guys want to read them, you can click right there on that link and you can read it for yourself what they were talking about. In May, former acting DNI Richard Grenell declassified a list of Obama administration officials who sought to unmask Lieutenant General Flynn, including Mr. Biden and former White House Chief of Staff Dennis McDonough. By the way, Dennis McDonough sought to unmask him the day of the meeting. Biden, some of those unmasking requests were before any of the phone call even happened. Now, you can use somebody else's code in how this works. So it could have been somebody else who requested the unmasking and they used Joe Biden's code. That's absolutely true. But do you think they did that without the vice president's consent and knowledge? You're about as crazy, if so, you're about as crazy as you were to ever think an operation like this would be carried out without the knowledge of the White House. No chance would anybody at Main Justice allow this to go forward without the president's explicit approval. No chance. Anybody who knew better knew that was a ridiculous idea from the jump. Quote, for the foregoing reasons, we grant Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus in part and direct the district court to grant the government's Rule 48 a motion to dismiss. The powerful appellate court's decision stated. In light of that grant, we vacate the district court's order appointing an amicus as moot. Unquote. That was to the face of Judge Sullivan, who went against a Supreme Court decision that was handed down like 9 days before this, dealing with amicus, third-party amicus. President Trump cheered the decision on Twitter. A White House source told People's Pundit Daily the president was pleased with the court's decision, unquote. Great. Appeals court upholds Justice Department request to drop criminal case against General Michael Flynn, he wrote. In May of 2019, we all know Attorney General William Barr assigned U.S. Attorney John Durham in Connecticut to investigate the origins of and potential wrongdoings in the probe. The two men enjoyed bipartisan praise and impeccable reputations before they threatened to expose the Russia collusion investigation as corrupt. Now, I just kind of went on a little tangent here. What's the point of all this? Why did I read it again? Right? Here is part of Strzok's notes that were revealed to the appellate court by the Justice Department, and that's how and why we have them now. And Sidney Powell, in her argument, the brief submitted to the D.C. Court of Appeals, she gets into this and more about how Comey told them that there was nothing wrong with the phone calls. Nothing. I know it's difficult to read, but right there on the third line where he scribbled, all right, he wrote VP Logan Act. What he's doing here is something a lot of agents and a lot of appointed people, whether, these people are note takers in the bureaucracy when they deal particularly with elected officials. They're note takers. And Strzok is here writing and jotting down notes. So he has, what is that word again? Laura, I always forget this word. It's not exculpatory. It's not corroborating evidence. Contemporaneous is the word. Thank you. I always forget this word. So right here in his little scribble, third line down, he's trying to say that this was Joe Biden's idea to use the Logan Act. It was Joe Biden's idea. Could you imagine? Let's play the imagine if game. Could you imagine the roles were reversed, okay, and Donald Trump did something like this? They had no evidence of collusion, and look at what they did to this man. They had no evidence, and they went after the president of the United States. Here, we have William Barr, about a month ago, come out and say that there is no effort to go after Barack Obama or Joe Biden. Why? We all know the answer to that question, don't we? At least when it comes to Barack Obama. There's no effort to go after Joe because, like Hillary Clinton, he's the Democratic nominee. And that makes you above the law. That makes you above the law in this country. If you're the Republican nominee, that makes you a target. If you're a Republican president, that makes you a target. There is black and white evidence, and there's more than this. This is the tip of the iceberg, by the way, I've been told. There is a lot more that points right at him, right at Joe, right at Obama. And then this coupled with the declassification list showing Biden's code being used numerous times to unmask Michael Flynn. To take the powerful weapon that is the intelligence community and turn it on your political opposition. This is another reason why Donald Trump is dealing with a fatigue from certain people. Because if Donald Trump loses and Joe Biden wins, they're going to go after him. They're going to try to make an example of him and his family. If you don't think that's going to happen, you're crazy. So Joe Biden is being protected for some strange reason because he's the Democratic nominee. And we all know why Barack Obama is being protected, especially during a time like this. He is the first black president. And nobody has the stomach to do anything about it. Nobody has the damn stomach. I don't know if you want me to answer that, but what is Trump's strategy to bring him to justice? He's letting Bill Barr do his thing. Bill Barr is an honest man. And so, by the way, is John Durham, or at least we know them to have, be honest in the past. They recognize fully that it is very hard for the left or people, especially in this climate. It will be difficult to get a guilty verdict against some of the people in the District of Columbia. That's just true. That's why I've argued, by the way, what we need is a separate court that deals with political prosecutions like this, a separate district of such. And I know the 13th in the Court of Appeals is supposed to handle these matters specifically, but the jury pool can't just come from Washington, D.C. Donald Trump won 4% of the vote in Washington, D.C. And it used to be that Democrats would say, oh, well, let's use it in the Northern District in Northern Virginia. That has become that is nothing but the suburban home of the people who work in D.C. Their thoughts don't vary all that much at all. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult to get a fair jury in that area. And we've seen this. We saw it with Paul Manafort, Roger Stone. And I'm not defending either one of those guys, but I am saying they are the victims of a political persecutions. There needs to be a different, more representative jury pool for these kinds of prosecutions that are political in nature, They deal with political corruption because you cannot trust a DC or Northern Virginian jury to do the right thing. It needs to be something that's representative of the country, like the flyover country. We need a different court for this. I'm telling you, we do. And it's the strategy is to let Barr do his thing. That's the answer to that. But Durham, from what we hear, it's not only, and Durham's no joke. I mean, it's just a real criminal investigation, but they are realistic about what it means to bring a prosecution against somebody like an Andy McCabe or a John Brennan or whatever. So they want to tell a story, basically, and it's convoluted. It's a hard story to remember, so, and they're very tight-lipped, very tight-lipped. We got one response to media requests when it comes to specific stuff. And I was stunned when they answered. They're not like Mueller. They're not filled with Andrew Weissman hacks. They're not going to run to the media and leak. They're going to do it right. And in fact, I can tell you too, they're getting a little pissed with Donald Trump's tweets. Like, he's making it harder for them. Inserting himself in this conversation. And I know he wants to defend himself, but he's making it harder for John Durham to do his job because John Durham is going to be targeted for a smear campaign. And he's got to help them out a little bit and give them the appearance of independence. Not just the appearance, he's got to let them do their thing. Durham's been trusted with both the right and the left. He is the deep state killer, or at least the corrupt deep state killer. He is not afraid to go after people. But he is, like any other man, going to worry about his own legacy and reputation. And Donald Trump's got to say it makes his job harder. I know Bill Barr and John Durham both feel that way. All right, let's see. Who would you say scribbled notes? Who saved them? This is incredible to me. That's a good question. Those were Peter Strzok's notes. Okay, and Bill Priestep, he's a scribbler too. Even years ago when all of this started, I said, Michael Flynn led to the special counsel. This is all fruit from the poisonous vices tree, and that they should just cut this crap out, go to the Supreme Court, and have them invalidate it like they invalidated Arthur Anderson, because we all know how Andrew Weissman works. And that all of this was going to end up really being fruit from the poisonous FISA tree because they were corrupt. They lied to the FISA court. The FISA court is clearly in on it. Devin Nunes is obviously right. Peter Strzok knows one of the judges. He calls him Rudy in his notes, like they're best buds. And it's Rudy Contreras. He was the first one to preside over the Michael Flynn case before he realized everyone was going to find out. And then he miraculously, without explanation, recused himself. That was obvious. He knew people were on to him. Alternative media, by the way, that was not being pursued at all by others like Fox News. All right. Anyway, so to get back to it though, they didn't think years ago, and even people I know and have talked to, they didn't think this was going to lead to anything because they weren't going to be this stupid to write stuff down. They memorialize things like that. It's very common for these bureaucrats to make notes and take notes, but even when it comes to Brennan and Comey and Clapper, you would think they weren't going to be so stupid that the bad things weren't going to be put down on paper. There's one email that's really bad, and it's a trio email with Clapper, Brennan, and you'll eventually hear about it. I'm sure the Durham investigation will include this. And Clapper is arguing that we should not be using the dossier as the foundation for this investigation. This is what's going to really expose it as a politically motivated investigation because Christopher Steele can't be trusted. The dossier is bullcrap. It wasn't verified. Nothing could be verified, and we know it. So to use it is not a good idea. John Brennan says, oh, shut up. You worry too much kind of thing. Comey agrees, and they move forward. Okay. And people are like, they wouldn't be so dumb to write this down. You have to remember, in the beginning, nobody ever thought Donald Trump was going to win. In the beginning, nobody ever thought anybody would see some of this crap. Then, as he did win, they really thought they would be able to remove him. And they have enough confidence in the system being corrupt enough to slow the wheels of justice, slow it down to a grinding halt. They were confident enough in it that, you know what, by the time we'll be able to get rid of Trump, the plan was fully to impeach him. They got tons of people to retire, to make the power of incumbency, that played a role in several areas. The plan got messed up when Donald Trump ran around the country and campaigned for Senate candidates. And he single-handedly saved control of the U.S. Senate for the Republican Party. Absolutely. Single-handedly. And that was not supposed to happen, because they figured if they got at least a little minority control, they would be able to get enough Republicans to cower and vote. And look how close it really did come. Look at how many Republicans, if the roles were reversed and Democrats took a handful of seats, didn't lose others that they lost, that they wound up losing, not a single red state Democrat couldn't be pulled back into line to toe the line. And Republicans almost lost more than Mitt Romney. Lamar Alexander almost caved. Susan Collins almost caved. Lisa Murkowski almost caved. So when you're doing it in your head and you're like, well, they would have needed 6 or 7 Republicans, even if the election would have went well for them, really well for them. Folks, I'm here to tell you there are tons of senators that hate Donald Trump, that are Republican senators. And absolutely, if it was in Democrat hands, would have voted to impeach him and remove him. And then nobody would be the wiser about all of this crap. So you should take that they wrote this crap down. You should take it as a sign of just how confident they are at hiding things from you. The media will help them. The system will help them. The corrupt status quo, we call the construct, will help them. And they really have nothing to worry about, nothing to fear. Look, even with some of this stuff that's released, they still feel pretty confident. All right, I see that 3-minute warning, Laura. All right, last one. Thoughts on DC statehood? That's a thing suddenly now. Maybe give them Northern Virginia and I'll be okay with it. Listen, it's a new thing in the news, but it's been something Democrats have wanted to do for a very long time. My thoughts on this are very simple. The founders were very clear. DC is not to have a voice. DC is not to have a voice. You do not give the center of power any say in how the country is governed. The founders were very clear about that. You don't like it? Don't live in Washington, D.C. People aren't even supposed to be there permanently like this. This thing turned into its own kind, like the blob. Just kept sucking people up. It was never supposed to be like this. DC statehood would be a catastrophe for everyone. It doesn't matter whether you are on the right, you're on the left, you're in the middle. Power centers don't get power. They are not supposed to get power. Ever. And we've already removed one of the biggest safeguards to that, which came in the form of the 17th Amendment. Power shouldn't be permanent. That's what the founders believed, and it shouldn't have a say. They were a lot wiser than we were. And to ignore them would be incredibly foolish. Democrats are looking at this from an electoral point of view. Everything. They look at everything from an electoral and political power point of view. COVID, tanking the economy, creating race wars, Washington, D.C. Same thing with Puerto Rico, by the way. This is what it's about for them. It would be a disaster for all of us. You do not give power centers any damn say in how the country is run. Period. End of story. All right, folks, we're about there. Did I miss any of them? I don't think I did. Awesome. All right, we're about there. I hope everyone has a great and safe weekend. Before you leave, do not forget, if you did already, to subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. If you guys are on Periscope, don't forget to give us those hearts, follow the accounts, and then mosey on over anyway to YouTube and subscribe to the channel. All right? and hit the notification bell to alert you when we're about to go live. Also, too, mosey on over to Facebook, like the page, People's Pundit Daily. Don't forget to do that. We'll love you back for it. And, of course, the best way to support the show, go get some data for your dollar, is to go and subscribe to People's Pundit Daily, which you can do by going to ppdnews.us/subscribe. ppdnews.us/subscribe. All right, folks, have a great and safe weekend. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. I am the People's Pundit, Rich Barris, and will join me back on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Kicking rocks, folks. Kicking rocks.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love. Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker, you're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. Rhythm in our love, it's impressive, excessive. You can't make this stuff up. My chest beats, it's restless, wakes the neighbors up above. Yeah, baby, come and show me love. Baby, come and show me love, because you're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette, 'cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah. We can get on a plane and take a one-way ride, steal us away to find a place we can hide. It wouldn't take much to spear for a knife to give into the need and leave it all behind. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow me away. 'Cause I know that you know that I know that you want me. You told me, now show me, come blow